Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Shay Ali here with you on Inspired Online. And this afternoon, we've got the lovely Andy Holloway with us. Now, if you've not met Andy before, Andy is a life and business coach. He does it through the medium of intuition and coaching, obviously, as well, and very dedicated to the world of personal development. So he's been helping business people and people with their personal issues for many years now. But fascinatingly, he's also, by doing what he loves, managed to I don't even know the word from that, to triple, more than triple, 5 times his income.
Quadruple something? I don't know.
Quadruple his income. So I think that's really inspiring, actually. And thank you for joining me today. And I'll start with the inspired question, which is, if you had to share your wisdom with the world in a nutshell, what would you say?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all, Shay. It's really a pleasure to be here. I've seen a lot of your stuff and it's been very inspiring to me. So thank you for what you're doing, really. I would say in a nutshell, really my message today is forgive. Forgive yourself and let go.
That's so powerful. And well, are you willing to dive deep into the personal journey of why that's so powerful for you, or why you came to that?
I'd love to.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, it all started really with my dad's passing in '99. I was a young boy and I was lost for many years. And I was always kind of searching for answers on that, you know, because before he died, I had a fairly sort of comfortable life. Everything made sense in terms of, you know, I had mum and a dad and a family and just had regular stuff going on for a teenager. And when that happened, it just shattered my entire world. And it really put me on this journey to want to understand what life was actually really about, because of all of what was happening to me at the time. And it was about 10 years later, actually, that I came to see a psychic. I actually did a psychic development course, which is one of the many personal development journeys I've been on. And this psychic gave us this opportunity at the end of this course to do a reading. We'd ask a question for someone and she'd come back with the answer. And I asked my dad, I said, why can't I speak with you and communicate more with you? And why can't we have this kind of relationship like that? Because, you know, I'm not getting that. And so this letter was so powerful, but I didn't really understood what it meant until about 2 weeks ago, if I'm honest.
Wow.
And I've had a pretty major breakthrough, which I'm really happy to share with you today. But he said, we will one day speak together, but right now I'm taking a back seat because I can see how much pain you're in, and you must forgive, son. You must forgive. You must let go. And he said that a number of times. And then he finished with literally the line that I read out at his funeral, just to, I think, tell me that it was him, you know, but I already knew it was the way he was speaking. And this whole concept of forgiveness and letting go, I thought I knew what it meant at the time. And I read a lot of books on it and tried to get sort of information intellectually on what it could mean. And it was only a couple of weeks ago now that it came to me and I realized what it really was. And so
it's actually really getting me, because I've lost my dad as well. So, but yeah, what did you come to?
Well, I have a whole new relationship with my dad. I mean, I've been in a relationship with him for some years, really, but now I understand what he gave me and what his soul allowed my soul to have. And it's so powerful. And as soon as I got it, it was from actually, I was looking in the loft to rummage around for stuff for a car boot sale. And I came across this photo of my dad and myself as a small boy. I think I was about one or two. And I just burst out in tears uncontrollably. I couldn't control it. And it all came out. All the emotion inside of me around it came out. And what I was left with after, you know, just being completely soaked with tears everywhere was this realization. And the realization that actually the turn of events that happened was perfect in how it happened. And I understand now what forgiveness means. And forgiveness, I've always thought in a dogmatic way that it's about forgiving other people. and it's kind of something external. I think that's what we're told in religion and other ways. It's okay, you've got to forgive this person if you want to be good, right? But it always seems to come with a caveat for me, you know, like I'll forgive them, but there's something holding you back from really letting that go, you know, like, okay, I'll be a good person and forgive them, but really I think they're, you know, a bit shit or something, excuse my French, but
yeah, I mean,
it's like that.
So you hold on to the pain, and you know, how do you let that go?
Well, what I found is it's an inside job. And what it's really happening is whenever you're faced with something that sparks some sort of emotional response in you, it's really a signpost, and it's really there to help you go within and address it there. And so, for example, in my life, I've got some challenges with my sisters who are concerned about me being with my mum, because my mum's got lung cancer and she's on a 3rd round of chemo, and wow, she's obviously very vulnerable. And I feel internally that I want to see my mum and make that work. And obviously I'm taking precautions around it, but they're sort of opposing that. And there's that challenge coming up, and it's causing me to really look at that. And what I'm seeing is that really I'm looking at them as being critical, right? So that's what I was holding, like they're being critical. What I really understand it now to be is that there has to be something inside of me that's being critical as well, that's producing that, that's creating that. Because everything that's inside of us is we're creating on the outside to help us know ourselves more. You know? So actually, when I went within on that, and I started to take a deep breath and really sink into that and look at that and say, well, where is it that I've been critical? Where is it that I'm being critical now? And it came to me instantly, and I was being critical in that moment by saying they were critical.
Yeah.
And so that was what was creating it in the first place. So for me, there's a massive gift you get in the challenge that you face, all these challenges that come up in our lives, because they're there to help us dig deeper inside of ourselves and really get to know who we are. Yeah. Because we're not the critic in us. We're not that critic. We're beyond that. You know, and that's something that can really help you in your life. And it's really just been a revelation for me. And you just look at the whole world in a different way, you know?
Yeah, you do. Well, especially, you know, and do you think it's only the people that are close to you that are like your mirror? Because, yeah, I do, you know, I feel that. Some, you know, my mum, I'm close to my mum, so she can act out when I'm feeling certain ways. And, you know, I remember, oh, I shouldn't say this really, but I had this ex when I first learned this. And I thought, oh, if I act this way, it's going to trigger him. Okay, let's experiment with my newly learnt knowledge. I won't say who it is, because I don't think they're watching anyway.
Let's hope not.
No. But yeah, you know, do you think it's only people that are close to you that trigger that, or do you think that it's the world around that triggers those things?
I feel very strongly that it's every single moment that opportunity is there for you. Every single moment. That is what, for me, life is. It's a reflection. It's a mirror. All of it. Now you speak about kind of people that trigger it more, people that you're close to. I feel, and I don't know this for sure, but I feel something inside of me telling me this, that you've got really a soul agreement with these people. There's a covenant that you've made. And so that's why these are even more special, really, these relationships, especially the ones that test you more, especially the ones that trigger you. Because without that triggering, you really haven't got the signposts you need to go to that place where you can go beyond that. And so I think when I look at family, I think a lot of people maybe resonate with this, where family is the biggest challenge, right? Yeah. Where people that are closest to you are. And I think there's a good reason for that, because we've made an agreement together, and it's not just them making agreement, it's a win-win agreement that you've both made. So you're doing exactly the same for them as they're doing for you. It's a beautiful union you make. And if you can get past the surface of what you think, who you think you are and who you think they are, and you go deeper and you understand who you really are, you find this peace and you start to look at people differently. I mean, just with my mum now, I used to get annoyed about her hoarding loads of food, right? She's got 2 fridge freezers completely full of food, and she continues to buy more, right?
Well, ask you at your mum's house.
Well, yeah. Well, it just triggered me because I hate waste and I hate these kind of things. So I would always kind of nag at her, you know, and just say, look, why are you doing this? I'd try and chuck stuff out and this stuff. But I realized what it was doing really, it was just causing her to be upset and me feeling like a nag to her. So we couldn't really have the kind of relationship we might have if that wasn't in the space. So I realized now, like, I just kind of look at it differently. I just allow everything. You just allow it. You allow more. And that's what letting go is, I think. That's the letting go part, right? It's literally allowing things and knowing that there's something else going on there that you're just not seeing, right? Because you're stuck in your narrative. You're stuck in your story about it. Like this identity you create, like Andy Holloway, this life and business coach, right? I'm this person. So that means maybe I need to have an authority, for example. I need to know what I'm talking about. And quite honestly, that's tripped me up so many times, certainly earlier in my career, because it's just not true. If you're completely present and you really can connect in a heart-based way with someone, something else happens in that relationship, you know?
You remind me actually of, and this goes on to a question that's asked a lot in the concept of cause and effect, and you know that if you live in this way that you believe you're at cause of everything and you create everything, then a very common question is, what about people that have gone through really distressing situations? And it reminds me of one of our speakers who also has a message on forgiveness. My soul sister, Janet Appeline, took the stage one of the first times it Inspired, and told a story about how her dad, when she was little, I think he nearly dropped her out of a window or something. It was something like that. I'm sorry, Janet, so I don't remember it exactly. But it was that story of how she came to peace, to forgiving dad when she witnessed, you know, such awful things as a child and went through such awful things as a child. So why do these things happen?
Well, I think the best way to look at it is just to come back what you said about cause and effect. Yeah, and I think that's the deeper perspective on this, because I can't really speak to an individual's journey, but I can speak to a realization I've had around cause and effect, that we often think, you know, we're the cause and then there's an effect. But now I realize we're the effect. The cause is spirit. The cause is who we really are. And we're living that out. So when we connect with that presence, we channel it. You know, we just are it. There isn't anything in the way to being it. There isn't any thought that's trying to understand things of how it is and why it is and what happened in our past anymore, because none of that's relevant anymore. And you've got this amazing freedom that comes with just being completely present and saying, okay, I'm spirit, manifest, and I'm going to live out what spirit wants, because it's what we want, because we're all spirit. Wow. So you move from a me identity and trying to understand why your life is like it is, to a feeling of this is us together in this. And I just feel like I want to express that, because it's what I feel compelled to do. And there's really nothing in the way anymore, you know?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to throw one of the other big life questions, and I really don't know the answer to this one, but I'm fascinated by it anyway, is do you think that things that happen to us are fate? Are they almost written in the stars? Or do we create them? Or do we think we create them because actually fate has written them for us anyway? So we think we've got free will, but actually we don't. I don't know.
That's such a great question, isn't it? I mean, I can tell you how I feel about that right now, and I'm pretty sure that's going to change tomorrow and the next day and the next day.
Let's go with the now. Well, what do you think?
I feel like probably the best analogy I could give on this is, if you think about a computer game, right? A computer game, and not to liken the sanctity of life to a computer game, but
I
a
love it
computer game.
already. Go, I've heard Law of Attraction compared to Argos, which like is my favorite. Thank you, Tony V, for that.
I like that.
mean, yeah.
They stick, right? These things. So that's kind of why analogies are good, I think.
Well,
Or
you
metaphors.
said you order it, and some magic stuff happens in the back that actually nobody's ever figured out what happens in the back of Argos. We just don't know. But magically, then our item appears.
So true, isn't it? There's amazing Argos workers, bless them.
So going back to the computer game, I love
computer
this already.
game. So I used to love computer games as a kid. You know, it was like my thing. And if you look at a computer game, every single option has been created in that game. Right? Anything you can think of doing, going left, going right, firing, jumping, everything, it's already programmed in, so that even though it feels like you're making the choice of it, and you are, there is a choice aspect to it, that's already there, held in that frame, that anything is already possible, and indeed is actually true right now as well. So I think it helps me with that, because it makes me think, well, of course it's a choice, but I think the choice element is, do you choose to be you or not you? That's the choice. And the choice as well, it's the kind of paradox of this is the feeling like you have to make a choice to get something and get somewhere, when actually it's really just about making a choice to say, I already am there right now, you know, because then when you're already there, you take all that weight off, you know, of thinking like you've got to do stuff. And in that moment, you connect with something that allows you to create whatever you want to create, just out of a pure desire of creating it. I want an ice cream right now. Great, I'm going to have an ice cream, right? Maybe I want to do a workout. I'm going to do a workout, right? I'm going to eat a cheeseburger if I want to eat a cheeseburger, right? But it doesn't come with anything. It doesn't come with any secondary thoughts of whether that's good or bad, because the morality part really is a construct. It really is. So I think the computer game makes me feel like, okay, I can choose what I want, but I can't lose really, because it's just a game, and I'm just having fun with the game. If you lose your lives in the game, you get to play it again, right? You get to try it again, and you get better at the game as you play it more. So it kind of gets more enjoyable in a sense.
So, like, just taking that analogy, or testing that analogy a little bit. I don't know if you've seen that film, The Adjustment Bureau, and for the benefit of those out there that haven't seen it, great film. And, you know, in that film, things have been written out, I guess. And the guy, the lead character in the film, thinks, actually, I don't like the way this has been written out. So he discovers that he doesn't have the free will that he thinks he has, and manages to break out of it. So it's almost like the things that were written in the game, to use that analogy, he actually went off script and did something else. Oh, sorry, I've just ruined the end now. So apologies, go and watch it anyway.
Still worth the watch.
So yeah, but he wants to go off script. So do you think it's possible to go off script and go beyond what, you know, is already written, perhaps?
I think because you have choice, because it's always your choice what you do with your life and what actions you take, I think we constantly go off script every day. I think that's what life is actually. It's going off script and then realizing that we're able to come back to this understanding that it's all really just a game and we're playing it, right? So I do think that everyone has this purpose, right? Has this sense of, right, this is what my best life would be like for me, right? This is what I'm here for, right? So for me, my calling is to give people back to themselves, right? To be able to take off this mask and just be themselves completely. And what I found is that's exactly the journey I've been on, right? So there's this kind of uniqueness in how you express it, right? It's like artists. They all have very different forms of expression, but they're no less beautiful pieces, really. I mean, it's all in the eye of the beholder, but if you could look at it like that, art is art, right? It's just different ways of expressing yourself. And so I think that's what life is. We're all artists, and we're all expressing ourselves in different ways. And I think there are signposts to help you to be able to express yourself in a way that would be best for you, you know? And you get these little signposts. I think what the signposts are the challenges, are the things that come up that push you to kind of shake your foundation and say, are you really who you are right now? You know, is this who you really want to be? Or do you want to continue to play the game you're playing? It's offering you this kind of invitation constantly to ask you, what game do you want to play here, right? How do you want that game to go? And it's amazing when you just play it with freedom, right?
Yeah, it is indeed. And so this is maybe a slightly flippant question, but ultimately, does it even matter what way you've gone?
There's like this divine paradox, isn't there, around that? It's like, no is the short answer. Nothing really matters, but not in the way we think, right? Because when you say nothing matters, it's like almost the thought comes up, well, what's the point then? I shouldn't bother, right?
Yeah.
But actually, when I hear that nothing matters, I hear, well, that's the point. So I'm just going to be able to have an amazing life then because of that, right? Because I haven't got any baggage anymore. I haven't got this weight that's telling me I got to do this and do that. So when you come from this place of it being a blank slate, right? Like, that's why I say I'm kind of reinventing myself every day. I think we all are, because you can get up in the morning, you can literally decide, right? Who do I want to be today? What do I want to do today? And there's a freedom around that. Now, when we think about our lives in a kind of the identity we've created for ourselves, there's a lot of limitations that come with that. You know, there's a lot of baggage of thoughts of, well, like, you know, nothing matters, then I won't bother getting up today, right? I won't bother pushing myself or doing this and that. And so when you kind of enter into this feeling that nothing matters, means that what you're thinking about in the problem of it doesn't matter, right? Your thinking around it doesn't matter. Like if I'm looking at an issue coming up and I'm thinking about that issue, that's the thing that doesn't matter, right? What matters is that I can be myself without that, and then see what I want to create.
Yeah. And yeah, I love that concept of blank slate. You know, I've wanted that many times in my life, actually, when you've got a construct and you think, let's just wipe the slate clean and start again. So yeah, no, there's a great freedom in that. I want to go back to, you know, the concept that we talked about at the beginning, which is that concept of forgiveness. And you talked about sometimes, you know, the basic concept is we think that we forgive outside ourselves. How do you actually forgive yourself? Is there a process that you use? How do you come to that emotionally?
I want to acknowledge my coach, David Foster, who you've actually had on your show here, an amazing human.
He's amazing. Yeah.
Who helped me to understand the concept of being myself. And what that's led to now is this understanding of how to be yourself, really. And so when we talk about forgiveness, for me, it's noticing what's happening really in that moment. So for example, if you're coming up to a challenging situation, you're seeing someone and you're thinking a thought about that someone, right? That's where to start. It's noticing what that thought is. What kind of energy is that thought? What kind of feeling do you have from that thought? So like I said with my sisters, you know, the thought is, you're being really critical to me. And so immediately you can go within and you can notice that feeling, right? When you do this more often, it gets easier, right? Because you can start to distinguish it more. I kind of see it now as, you know, like radio waves in the air or Wi-Fi. If you were to see that, you would be able to see all these waves in the air, right? And they're literally filling the air all around us. We just can't perceive it.
You wouldn't be able to see anything else, I think.
Exactly. So I kind of see thought waves in a similar way, right? Thoughts you have. I think if you did the science on this, they probably haven't caught up to this yet, or maybe they have, I'm not aware of it, but I would imagine it's pretty much the same as kind of sound waves or Wi-Fi waves or whatever. It's like waves of energy, right? When you can kind of see it like that and observe it like that, you immediately detach yourself from it. And when you detach yourself from it, it loses its efficacy, its energy. It doesn't have this kind of power over you where you're buying into it and you're assuming that that's just how it is, right? So immediately you're like, whoa, maybe it isn't like that. Maybe I'm creating this, right? And so what I do is and this is a constant thing, right? This is a practice I think you need to come back to every day. And there's definitely certain things you can do in your life that will help you tune into it more. Like for me, just letting go of alcohol, any kind of drugs, even coffee for me. And this is different for every person. It might not work for them, but for me, that's helped me more than anything to be able to hear it, to be able to notice it. Because I think you dampen it down with other stuff, right? And this doesn't have to be substances. It could be something emotional, like a relationship you're in as well, whatever it is. But I take a deep breath and I just go within. And then you ask yourself very softly, notice what is that feeling you have for that other person, right? Notice what it is, name it. So for me, being critical, I say, where have I been critical? Where am I being critical right now myself? And then you notice, you remember, it might be a memory you've had, right? You want to go into, it might be multiple memories. It might be in that moment as well. Once you hook onto it and you realize that's what it is, then you're able to let it go. And that's the second part of it. You say to yourself, I love you. Thank you for that. And I let you go. And I let you go. And if you continue to do this over time, that becomes the norm. That becomes the default. Whereas before, the default was to go into and feel like that person's offending you in some way, right? And then you're going to react because you're reacting from your identity. You're not reacting from who you are. Yeah. So when you're actually sinking into who you are, there is no reaction because you realize that person's given you an amazing gift to be able to heal part of yourself, to be able to know yourself deeper. And that is a gift. That's the best gift anyone can ever give you.
Okay, so my head went to a few years ago. Someone rear-ended me on the motorway and wrote off my car. So obviously, in that moment, I was extremely angry that had happened. Thankfully, I was safe and everything, but my car was not. It anger's quite a human emotion. It comes up. And is it then wrong to feel angry, or how could you self-check in that moment, and what would be the better way to react?
Well, as soon as you make it wrong, you're buying into it again, you see. So the first thing is not to make it wrong, because it's not wrong. It's a reaction your ego is having to help you know yourself more, right? So if you look at it like that, really, I would ask you, what were you feeling about that person in that moment? What were you thinking about them?
I was actually annoyed. This probably sounds really shallow. I was about to meet a good friend of mine for tea that afternoon, and he just ruined my day. So that was the first thing that went through my head. Yeah, so I guess.
What were you sort of thinking about him in that moment? So, for example, when that came up and you had that feeling in the day, what were you thinking about him? What were you sort of calling him in your head? If you can go there.
I don't think I was thinking any kind of rude names or anything like that.
Just what he's done, or how he's appeared to you in that moment.
Yeah, I just, I thought, oh my God, I'm not going to swear on this, but he's completely careless, I guess. And he's driving like this massive BMW and my car's really tiny. And, he just wasn't paying attention. But if I was being kinder, he had a child in the car, the child was crying, and he wasn't paying attention. The child was taking his attention.
Are you open for me to ask you some more about this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So if you just look at it like that, so your feeling was he's being careless, right? If you take a moment yourself and you just look at yourself, where have you been careless?
Yeah, honestly, in that moment, I was also, just before it happened, I was, this again sounds really shallow, but I wanted to go to Disney World and it was sold out on the day that I wanted to go. So in my head, I was thinking, yeah, I need to sort that out because I've booked my ticket to Florida and that's the only day I can go. And how dare they sell out? And, the representative at Disney that I'd just spoken to was not a representative of being happy. You know, it's like, we are sold out. And I'm like, how are you making this the happiest place on earth? So my mind was circling that. It's not the biggest deal, but I was in kind of frustrated and let's solve this, and people are not helping me solve this.
So do you notice a carelessness in that?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of expecting things to go my way without really organizing myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It may have been in that moment, Cheryl. It may have been somewhere else, if you think about it. Has there ever been a time in your life, for example, where you've been careless?
Yeah, of course.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
So
probably many.
imagine if you could address that, right? And heal that part of yourself. Not that you're not going to be careless again, but that you are okay with it happening, right? That you allow carelessness to be and not judge it. Imagine that possibility for yourself, right? Well, how you could not have to have that in your life anymore, right? That feeling of, well, that's me being wrong about being careless, right? It's a freedom you achieve, right? Because carelessness is still there, right? It still will exist. Not that you're trying to eradicate carelessness. It's that you've got a whole new way of understanding what it is, and that you're not attached to it anymore in that way. You're not putting stories on top of it. And so what that guy was really helping you to see was, it's highlighting something, right? It's something that you're forced into this situation. And the invitation there is to say, okay, where is it I've been careless in my life? Can I forgive myself for that? Can I let go of any feelings that I was being wrong then, and I did something wrong and I was bad and I wasn't doing it right? Can I let go of that? And so that can prompt you to do it, right? And when you've really made peace with that and you healed it, it's very unlikely you're going to create scenarios like that again in your life.
I hope
where
not.
there's someone you feel careless about.
About to get a much nicer car, so fingers crossed.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. You know, very much so. And I guess, you know, some other gifts. There were some other gifts from the situation, obviously. I mean, getting your car written off is not great. But I did get its twin, which had 30,000 less miles. And I got some money out of it for my injury and stuff. So, I mean, you know, there were benefits, I guess.
And we actually met on a John DeMartini experience, didn't we?
Yeah,
and
we did.
That was quite an intense week.
Yes, it was indeed.
And I was thinking a lot about this recently as well, about John DeMartini, because, you know, we were just talking there, it's kind of, you were doing a bit of the DeMartini thing, and you're sort of saying, what are the benefits of it as well?
Yeah.
Because it has you see something in a different way, right? It has you see that there's more to a situation than you're currently seeing from that perspective, right?
Yeah.
And what I kind of see about that is the DeMartini experience has been amazing for me up to a point, and now I've kind of seen that there are other ways as well to see this. There isn't just one way. There's many roads lead to Rome, right? And the DeMartini, I think, for me, this is a similar thing that's happening, really. Because if you look at the breakthrough experience of DeMartini, he has you go back to times in your life where you're holding judgment over, and he has you balance it out, right? To go into a neutral space. So you're not feeling any kind of judgment. You're not too proud. You're not too negative about it. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing, because that's when you have perspective that's true, that's from truth. There's not stories around it. So I think that experience is going to be really beneficial for certain people that maybe aren't resonating with some of the spirituality of it or something like that want to do something in a sort of a scientific way, perhaps. I think that's the road for them.
Definitely.
It's really a realization at the end of the day, isn't it, that you have, and it's to see things differently, you know.
It is. And I'll add this as a bit of background. You really need to be careful what you say, because I'm going to give away my age, sort of. But I used to say to myself, I want to drive a Tesla before I'm 40. And I wasn't 40 yet, but I wasn't far off either. And I'd been driving my little car for so many years, and I loved it so much. And I'm like, really want my Tesla, but I'm going to miss my little car because I love it and I was so attached to it. And, you know, the moment that I got its twin, I wasn't in love with my car anymore, you know. So
Yeah.
it's like, you know, the attachment went, and it was like, you really wanted a Tesla before you're 40? Well, here's your opportunity, because now you don't have a car. Now, you know,
What was that like, that realization then for you?
it was just like, oh, but I'm not 40 yet. You know, I wanted another 2 years. You know, that's what I said to universe, kind of. I wasn't quite ready yet, and I don't have the money and all this kind of thing. So I did have an opportunity there. I didn't take it. And now I think, you know, universe has sent, I'm sounding really shallow in this, I'm so sorry, but I think I've got even more signs now that, okay, this car has got to go. You know, it's now at the same mileage that my car has got to, and yeah, it's time to actually get the car that I want to get. And that,
Yeah.
so.
Well, just on that, I mean, what I think is interesting about that one is again, if you follow this same perspective, you can say, well, I don't actually need the car or anything, right? But I want it, and that for me is a very different thing. When you remove, I've got to get something by I'm 40, right? It's interesting. It's a similar journey for me because I'm approaching 40 myself here, and it's this feeling I've had about a year ago, I think, was I've got to get stuff done by 40, right? I've got to be where I want to be professionally. I've got to have a certain amount of money in the bank, and 40 is that time. And there was all this stuff I'm then putting on it, right? And all this pressure. And I realized that actually what that was doing was just causing stress. That's it, really. It was just causing worry because I was making myself wrong for what I had currently. That's really what it did. It just said, okay, well, you're not right now then, right? You're incomplete in some way, right? And that's not a nice thing to feel about yourself, really.
No,
it doesn't feel good. And so if you can kind of have the freedom to look at that as, okay, yeah, I'm going to be 40. Yeah, it's a good idea to, you know, get my life together how I want to get it. But, you know, it doesn't really matter if I do or I don't, because my peace and my freedom comes from not actually worrying about everything. That's where it comes from. Not thinking I've got to do something and fit into a box in some way. And so that's a nice way to be, I found. You know?
It's lovely. Now we're going to go a bit over, well, we have gone a bit over, I'm sorry about that, but I have got another question for you if you're open to answering one last question.
Absolutely, yeah.
So when you talked about the intuitive development, I've also wondered how it works when you look into the future. Now, I had quite a personal example of this last year, and I'm not going to share the whole example, but I'll give you a little bit, which was in April, I had this session, which was called Quantum Healing Hypnosis Therapy. And yeah, and in session, the person said, would you like to visit your future self? And I said, yes, okay. You know, and I'm kind of in deep hypnosis. And I had this vision that I was here. And this is Richard Branson's home. In fact, I didn't know that that's where I was, but I knew that I was wearing white, and I knew initially I thought I was getting married, and I'm like, no, this isn't my wedding. I'm wearing white, and I'm at a party that's hosted by Branson. How did I get here? I don't know. And then I left the session. I thought my brain has just made that up. I mean, I have no connections to Virgin or Branson or any parties that he may be hosting, or with anyone that may be affiliated with that. And then what happened is a few months later, long story short, I actually did get invited to this island's called Mosquito, which is not where he lives, in a party that was not his. Yeah. So what happened? You know, why do we get insights like that?
Hold on. I think I've got the answer. What if, Shay, there isn't really any time? what if that time is really a way we can experience ourselves, and so it's useful to us because it allows us to have this gestation period where we can get to know who we are, right? But what if there isn't really time, and everything that you can ever think of happening has already happened, is happening now, right? Now, this is a difficult one to get the head around, probably will be for a lot of listeners too, which is why you can't really, I think, go there in your mind too much when you think about this. You have to feel your way into it. But when I feel into that, this is the kind of work I do with clients around their vision. I try and guide them to get a sense of not just that being their future, but how that's someone that they could step into being now, right? And actually, by going there and focusing on it, you start to get these desires around it even more, right? Because it's really about desiring what you want and who you want to be. And there are infinite options available to you. But I really, truly believe that future self you're talking about, it's about connecting with it and then becoming it, and it's integrated then, right? And it's more of an integration process than I've got to get from A to B, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, yeah, I just, I always wonder how that works, but I guess
Such a cool story as well. I've had a few like that in my life, and that's the thing. When you trust it more, you start to, if you think about it being like this big oak tree of life, right? And there's lots of branches that come off that tree, and you're starting at the trunk, right? You've got all these potential branches you could go down, and it really, whichever one you go down depends on the choices you make, right? And so I think when you can connect with who you really are, it becomes more obvious what choices, and actually life starts helping you with those. Like, for example, just talking to you now came from a moment I had a thought of, I really love Shay's stuff. I'd love to connect with her. I'd love to have a conversation with her. And literally, you sent me a message within a minute on Messenger. Right? You've never sent me a message before, have you? We've had no communication since that time we were together in that thing. So how can you explain that, right? It was a choice, you know. I made a choice, and you decided that was your choice too. And because it's a we, remember, not a me. So we realized that there was some worth in us connecting, right?
Yeah.
And then that's the path we then created for each other, and we co-created it.
Yeah, amazing. And that happens a lot. So how can you be more conscious of those moments? I mean, I do that as well. I've shared this when I think one of my hosts interviewed me, sometimes I play with it. I'm like, okay, God, give me a sign. And one of my biggest examples was I was in the Congo, of all places, and I was invited to Boston to study at Harvard. And I'm like, okay, God, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to Boston, but if you want me to go, you're going to have someone mention Harvard or Boston to me tomorrow. And if that happens, then I'll go. Now, in the middle of Kinshasa, on a course that I've run a million times, this was extremely unlikely. And the next day, someone started talking about Harvard for about half an hour. And again, long story short, I went, followed the intuition, got a free trip because the airline bumped me off, and I ended up getting paid $3,000 to stay in Boston for 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So, how can we play with that more? How do we actually, engage with God, Spirit, Universe to give us those signs and to go in a way that you might not ever have expected in the game?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you are God and we are God. And when you believe that truth, or just realize that truth, you realize nothing's really going on the outside. It's all happening on the inside, right? So what's helped for me is just to be able to connect with that more, to be able to trust that feeling. Because everyone, if you describe to people what their intuition or instincts, they know really. It's a feeling, right, that you get. And I think a lot of the time we just don't trust those feelings, right? We think, oh, we need to read more about something. We need to think more about it. We need to my dad always used to say, we need to get the bump and read it up and make sure we go through all the fine print before we make the decision. And so we've just lost connection with that sort of anchor, that guiding sat nav that's always in us. And so it's just about trusting it more and distinguishing what that is. And it communicates through feeling, you know, it communicates through the sense we get in our body. And for me, it's about just tending to your garden, really. And that's the best way I can sort of look at it. Tend to the soil, meaning for me, that's, and this is different for everyone, right? Potentially, but for me, it's a clean diet. It's some form of meditation or something. I do yoga as well in the morning because it reminds me of myself more. I can get a sense of, I can hear that voice clearer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so in the end, you start to really trust that more and just go with it. And the best thing about it is it doesn't have any time lapse attached to it. It's instant, it's there, and it means you can just act right now. You don't have to wait for these things to happen or working stuff out. Like if you get an instinct to call someone, right, just call them, right? See what that's like, instead of, oh no, I better do that later because I've got stuff to do here, right? Or I've got to do this, this and that, because that just means you're not trusting yourself. And when you're not trusting yourself, I think that has an impact in your life. It prevents you from accessing this amazing resource that's, you know, for all of us, and it's us. So yeah, there's things you can do, certainly, but I think some sort of practice where you're practicing that connection with yourself in that way is just so powerful, because we've got a lot of stuff going on right now, especially in modern society. You know, for me, I have to get out in nature every day. I have to get there for a minimum 2 hours. So I might go for a run in the morning, might go out in the afternoon, but that reconnects me. Because if I'm on my computer all day or on my phone all day, which I often am, because that's how we connect in this day and age, it takes me out of that space, and you can feel it. I feel a sense of discord, you know, a sense of anxiety that arises. And there are ways that you can practice that just reduce that right down. Like, you know, like in a hospital, you have that EMF thing or something with it's like it's going like that, your brain all the time. And if you do this kind of practices, it just gets less and less, right? Yeah. And then it just slows down, and then it just goes like that. And then you're like, wow, yeah, that's who I am.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, well, on that note, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us today?
You know, the forgiveness, I think, is a great inquiry to make for everyone here. And you know, the best piece of information I know that really goes into this in a lot more detail is The Way of Mastery. And it's a collection of books that are like my Bible. And I look at these not from just reading it page to page, sitting with a chapter, reading it back every day, really soaking in what that means. And this is one of those books. So if anyone wants to really learn a bit more how to do this, they can certainly get in touch with me, or definitely read that book and take it in, if that will serve them right now. And that's what I would recommend.
Lovely. And if any of this lovely audience would like to get in touch with you, where can they do that?
Well, I'm mostly on Facebook at the moment, so the best place to reach out to me is on there. I think Andrew John Holloway is my full name. I made this Facebook account like 20 years ago. So but you can find me on there, and I'll be tagged on this, I'm sure. So just get in touch if you want to have a conversation, for sure.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today, and take care of yourself. Happy lockdown.
Thanks, Shay. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, it has indeed.